أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So yesterday we had 3 sessions. The first one we established started from how I experienced this life, events and whatnot. We said there must exist a creator, human can read such a thing. And then we said this creator is speaking to me through light. So I get some messages from there. So we talked about belief in angels in this regard. We said, but we are not very clear. Still, we have questions. So we are in need of a clear speech that would speak to me in a way that I can understand best, which is human language. So we talked about scripture, belief in scripture. But we said that it's belief in scripture or just speech talking to me in and of itself. Human experience, human learning does not happen only like this, but that I need to see that in a human example, how that message is lived with. So we talked about Quran needs to be lived, not only to be read. This was the second session. And then we talked about how that ideal person should exist. And then in session 3, we said that, okay, if a prophet has to exist, but why creator does not speak to me directly, but rather use an intermediary of prophets. In a sense, the question was, why am I not that prophet? So that question, although it sounds a little too heavy, saying that, well, of course, I'm not claiming to be the prophet. But in a sense, the other version of the same question is, why does creator not speak to me directly with the scripture as he spoke to the messenger? But I am listening to his speech through messenger. This was the question in session 3. We talked about that. We talked about what would be the context of speech. How would I be a recipient to the speech? Which was understanding my otherness was our major point. And the one who would recognize and practice his otherness to the utmost degree would be the most recipient, most open to receiving the revelation. This is whom the creator, with his wisdom, would speak. So hence, since I'm not that person, I will go and search for someone who is such a person. So we ended that. We were in the search for a person who would recognize his otherness to the utmost degree, who would be responding to the creator for his bounty at the utmost degree. He must be the one who is going to deliver this message to me. So now, at that moment, at the end of the first session, we somewhat have a profile of what a messenger should be like, more or less. But then we hear that a person called Muhammad, Muhammad Arabian, came out 14 centuries ago and said that I'm the messenger. How do I know?
Okay, so I guess we'll pick it up from there. So this is session 4. So I guess, listening to what you were saying and yesterday, it's obvious that, I need a teacher in my life or somebody to sort of instruct me or teach me. I think that's obvious. Just practically speaking, everyday life, for example, a child just learning how to do anything. They need some sort of observation, external to themselves, to know how to walk, to eat, to go to the restroom, to brush their teeth. They need somebody to show them something. Otherwise, you can't, it's hard to think about how you would come up with that thing by yourself without some sort of guide or assistant or teacher. So I think practically everybody does that in their lives. I mean, we do that when you go to school, you have an instructor or a teacher, and whether it's school or work or at home. I mean, there is some sort of guide. And then probably, also, if you leave aside even human beings, just going out into the environment, things are teaching you how to do something. For example, I guess let's say if you want to like grow some crops, if you're a farmer, in a sense, the earth, like you're reading how to utilize the earth, the soil, the water, the sun to grow food. And, you experience that in your everyday life as a farmer. Like it's instructive, it's giving you feedback, it's teaching you. I mean, it's not like if you didn't have the farm there, or you didn't have the soil or the earth, you wouldn't know necessarily how to plant seeds or how to actually grow crops. You need some sort of feedback. So it's obvious in our everyday life that that's how we can live our lives. We need some sort of external, or agents, right? But some sort of external stimulus to, cause us to know something or to like make something apparent to us. But what you're talking about is a very specific sort of person. So it's not just like any human being, it's one specific human being. And I guess, my question is, how do we know that this person is the person that we should be looking to? Like, how is he an appropriate person? Why not anybody else?
Yeah. So at the end of last week's discussion, we brought it to the point that Creator must talk to such a person, but that person is not going to be someone who he spoke to, and now he is hiding inside a cabinet and he's not going to speak out. So I am expecting such a person to first declare his prophethood. Just to reiterate what we were talking very briefly. So the Creator, as he chooses to speak to that person, he wouldn't only leave it to himself, he would also ask him to invite people to that message, because in a sense, living that message is the purpose of this creation apparently. Because the creation is written as a book. The Creator is writing the creation as a book, and for the purpose of making himself known. But I'm not able to properly understand that. So what he does is he is speaking clearly to a person. So, and this person truly now becomes, if you like, a key to the creation itself. So it doesn't make sense that this person is going to stay hidden. So it makes perfect sense that this person is going to be charged with the duty of go and invite. Because this is the masterpiece of this creation. Like if you take the Creator as an artist, prophets are going to be the masterpiece of his artwork. So he would like to show them to humanity more than anything. So they are going to be visible. So it's not like we are searching for a needle in the haystack. It's not like, are you the prophet? Are you the prophet? That I'm going and asking every single individual. So first of all, those people must be visible people. They're not invisible.
So he's not somebody mysterious that like only a few people have access to.
Yeah, it cannot be. It doesn't make sense, because it doesn't make sense in the sense of that since the Creator is all wise, he wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. I mean, he wouldn't speak to someone who is going to hide the message to himself. It doesn't fit the idea that we have been following.
I guess if we draw an analogy, I mean, kind of going back to this, like the child example, a child by definition has a parent. I mean, in 99.99% of cases in history, two parents. So they have somebody there to learn something from, I guess. So I guess if they have that, then why leave the universe, which is probably the greatest? Like, yeah, I may need to know how to eat or how to take care of myself. And that's maybe an important question I need to ask myself about my day-to-day life. But the more meaningful question about, what am I doing here? What does this world mean? That probably has far more relevance to me as a human being. So you're right, in the sense that how could I not be shown or given the key or given some sort of guide or teacher for that? So
that teacher must exist and must be visible.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be hard for me to find. But the question is, there are going to be multiple candidates out there.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes out and says that I am the prophet, I am bringing you the message, so then how would I know if this person is a genuine messenger or not? I guess this really very boils down to. So he is going to be visible to me, but there are also other candidates which are false claimants and saying that, oh, I am also a messenger. Or some of them would say, not even claiming to be a messenger, he would say, well, I'm a philosopher, but I'm coming up, or I'm a guru, And here's the idea that I introduced. It's going to save you
And there are plenty of those people out there.
a lot of time, yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So what is it that I am searching for a person who would be a good person that I'm looking for? I guess this is very important.
Yeah. So I guess my question then is, what sort of evidence or proofs are you looking for to see that one person over another, or in this case, Muhammad is that person you're looking for?
Yeah. So going back to where we started from, so what do I have now? The purpose of my creation, my existence seems to be get to know my maker.
Okay.
Because we need to ask that question, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like you are studying in a college, in a school, you know why you are there. You need to get a degree. This is your purpose. If I ask the same question, I was put in this world. Why am I put in here? What is the purpose of my life? I mean, just making a super shortcut. I am here to get to know my maker. The maker of this creation, this universe, wants to be known, wants to be loved. Pretty much like you go your house, your mother prepared you some cake and whatnot. You say that, oh, my mother with that cake wants me to know that she loves me, she takes care of me, she's aware of me, all these. So the whole creation, I can easily understand that has a maker and the maker wants to be known. What are the things that make me know him? So the first one is the creation. So the cake over the table or the air that I am breathing. This is the first one. The second one is the speech of the creator, as we talked about. And the third one is the messenger, who is going to be living example. So these three has to be hand in hand. So the prophet then that I'm looking for should be a person who is going to be in line with creation, first of all. There shouldn't be contradictions with how he is living, what message he brings. There should be a perfect match with the creation and his message, the Quran. And then the way he exemplifies the Quran shouldn't have any contradiction. And we are, in this case, talking about, let's say, a book which is more than 6,000 verses, a lot of messages it brings, and it encompasses all aspects of life. It is very easy to find contradictions with anybody's life. So, for example, take me. I am claiming to be a follower of the Quran. You can easily spot, if you just observe me for 10 minutes, you can say that, oh, you are claiming that you believe in this book, but you're doing this, you're doing that, how come? So this clearly shows, for example, that even if I were to claim that I am the prophet and brought you the Quran, you would say, well, you're not following this message in the first place, so it doesn't make sense. So I would expect the prophet to be his message, first of all, to be in perfect alignment with the creation.
So you're saying two books in alignment. So this universe as a book, and then his revelation that he claims that his revelation is coming from.
The book, yeah, these two books should be aligned, and his life is now becoming the third book, if you like, which is going to be aligned with these two books.
Okay.
So this, if I see some contradiction over there, I would say, well, you are not. If the creator entrusted this to you, you shouldn't be like this, because he would know whom to entrust his speech, and there shouldn't be any flaw, there shouldn't be any contradiction. If I see a contradiction, I would say, no, you cannot.
So I need to verify these things.
Yeah.
I mean, because I have the universe in front of me, and I have this revelation and this person, this individual. So they all should be in agreement. It makes sense to me. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and as I interact with them, they should be fulfilling this goal of my life, getting to know my creator.
I see.
So it should serve that purpose.
Okay.
That purpose.
So if they're teaching how to make money or how to get a good job, that's not relevant.
Yeah, it's not within the purpose of a messenger, or it's not part of my worry in the real sense of the worry.
That's fair. So you talk about, you mentioned revelation, which this individual is bringing, this prophet. I guess there's many revelations that are claimed to be revelations out there from a creator or a God to this universe. I guess in our context, you're talking about the Quran. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So his message is, we can say, the number one proof that we can make use of. Because it is such a message. Like every person has a message. I might be claiming to have some message. Well, I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but like all philosophers or all thinkers have some sort of a message being delivered to me.
Okay, let me add before you go. When you say message, how do you define that specifically? What
Okay,
does that mean?
so
Can you both speak just one tone higher?
okay.
So it reaches like more back.
Is that the mic? There?
For us, you're
Oh, okay.
For us,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
Like the sound travels and
Okay.
by the time it
Come forward. Okay.
Well, so I'll ask my question again. So, what do you mean by message? Like, how would you define that?
Okay. So, like, before coming to the prophet, so I guess we might be thinking that I came up with a very bright idea, which is going to benefit all the people in this room. So, and it might be, oh, put your money into Bitcoin, this sort of an idea. It might be. So some, I guess nowadays, this would be a popular message to be delivered. But when it comes to humans' real problems in life, as why am I here? Where am I going to? Who put me here? What's the purpose? Like this sort of trouble, like troubling problems. Why am I dying? But the biggest problem.
Fundamental human questions.
Fundamental human questions needs to be answered. So I'm expecting my creator to answer those questions. Many of those questions are not being answered by anyone else really. Like yesterday, Brother Shoaib was here. He was talking about some New Age philosophy. And he said, Brother Osman made a comment about that philosophy. And it just, a single sentence crashed everything for me, he says. This worldview is just another materialistic worldview, meaning that it doesn't answer the question, what's going to happen to me? I'm dying. So such fundamental problems I do have, are these being answered? So this is the message or the answers that I'm expecting to hear from my creator through a messenger, like as a human exemplar who lives by that message.
So I guess in one sense that it needs to acknowledge that you do have these questions and then provide a satisfactory answer.
Yeah. So those questions must have been his questions at some point. He is answered with those questions. So he really tastes what that answer is like. He experienced it. He benefited from it, and he can empathize with me for having those questions and issues. And when he sees me in the eye, he would say, La ilaha illallah, for example, and then it's going to save me from my worries, and it's going to satisfy all my unease. So this is what I would expect from that person. This is why that person, this is another reason he must be a human being, because I'm going through those problems. I took those problems seriously, feel the pain about them. Once the answer comes to me, it fits perfectly. And when I see that you're suffering from the same problem, then when I explain it, you will enjoy and taste it more. But let's take the other way around. If I was this robot-like person, and those answers are loaded to me as information, but I never tasted the pain of it.
Meaning you never had questions yourself.
Yeah. So I never thought about that. It was never a problem for me and whatnot. And now I'm coming to you and I see that you're suffering the problem of that. And then I'm just quoting you the answers, memorized answers. How much would you benefit from that?
Probably not much.
Just say you're just like a parrot, you're speaking something, you don't know what it really means. So he needs to be the human who went through that, who tasted to the very depths of those problems. But once the answers came, he said, yes, it clicks perfectly for him. And then he conveys that message.
Now, are there, I mean, I guess we do know, but, have people confirmed this message? Are there people historically,
So let's focus a little bit more on the message. So what is the message in here? The message is, first and foremost, La ilaha illallah.
Okay.
So it is such a message that really we can compare it to alternative messages today. What are the alternative messages? When I go to university, what is the biggest message that I get from there? Things happen by themselves or by chance. This is the message that we get from our how many years of education. You don't need to go to a university for that. From like preschool, you start getting that it happens, it rains because such and such.
Yeah, actually, I was having a conversation with somebody, and about rain, and they were explaining to me the water cycle. So yeah, it says, adults, that's what people parrot, you know?
And what is the message that this gives? It is just this machinery is working.
Correct, yes,
It's like a soulless machine,
yes.
and in between the what's that? Those circular things that grind.
Gears.
Gears. So these gears of this machinery is turning, and if I happen to be in between them, I'm going to be grinded between them because it's a soulless machinery, no mercy, no nothing. And as if this describing it as a motorcycle, which our science does. So I'm going to be drowned in this machinery. It's merciless. The biggest message that it gives is it's a merciless world. So you have to take care of yourself. Be strong because the strongest will survive. So this is the message that our naturalistic worldview, the science that we study is giving. On the other hand, when the messenger comes and says, his biggest message is La ilaha illallah, what does that mean? Because the other one was saying everything is a creator in and of themselves. Like water cycle, or water acts like this, sun acts like that, particles acts like this, COVID virus acts like this, and we need to, my cells need to combat against them. Like there's this competition, there's this fight in that world. But when Rasulullah comes, his message is La ilaha illallah. It is such a big message saying that everything is being under the command of one. So everything comes from one hand. It's totally converting the worldview. It is upside down. Everything is being upside down because generally our perception of science is objective. What sort of objectivity is here? We thought that, it's just describing the water cycle. It doesn't make any comments. But what is the message we get from this water cycle or any of this machinery? At the end of the day, you would say that, there's no mercy in that picture. I am in need of mercy. But at the end, your conclusion is being survival of the fittest, which is an interpretation that you come up with. There's a message in there. It's not only observation. It comes with its interpretation. And this interpretation is really putting me in a world in which it's so dark and I just have to stay strong. But how long can I stay strong? In the worst case, I'm going to become 60, 65. From there on, I'm going to be weak anyways. Like even if I try to appear strong, like step over you, step over him, earn a lot of money and hire doctors and lawyers and whatnot, there's going to be a time in which I'm not even able to raise my hand. So it is such a dark world. But when the messenger comes and says, there's no God but God, he says, water cycle is not a thing that happens by itself. Or gravity is not a thing, or death is not a thing by itself. COVID is not a thing that is going to kill you by itself. Everything is within the command of one. And he's not only claiming this, but in his speech, he is explaining how this happens. So the Tawheed message, when I look at it, I say that, this man is really talking about something. Because it really shines out compared to the messages of the others. Because the messages of the others are contradicting me first and foremost, but also the reality. I don't see that fight in the existence. I see a harmony in the existence, but the way it's being depicted, survival of the fittest, it shows as if everything is fighting against each other. Is it a fight or is it a harmony, a brotherhood that exists in the existence, the creation? So this is why even when I hear his biggest message, when he says, La ilaha illallah, I say, this is on the right track. I would expect a messenger to be speaking such a word.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense in that it's a completely different worldview or perspective than something that I get exposed to that doesn't really satisfy me. I guess my one concern though is that while what you're saying, like I can see that makes sense. To some extent, I kind of feel a little bit. I guess I would feel a little bit more reassured if I wasn't the only one who felt this way, or people also didn't feel this way in terms of saying that this message makes sense. Because, for example, like let's say I go out into the world here, let's say some university. There are plenty of people who subscribe to this worldview about machinery, and they don't think twice about it. I don't find that satisfactory, as you said, but do people just generally think what you're saying is that, I guess what I'm saying is, at least I would feel some sort of contentment, a little bit, that I'm not the only one, and that there are other people who share the same idea, and then they too feel that this is what is true.
Yeah. It's this tradition of La ilaha illallah message,
Yeah.
and even the tradition of messengerhood is not something new
Yeah.
that just popped out 13th century. It is as old as humanity.
Yeah.
So all the previous scriptures, first of all, their existence points that this was a human need from the very beginning, and the Creator addressed this need. So all the scriptures are, in a sense, supporting the existence of this scripture. Not only in their existence, also in their content. They are converging to the idea of that there is this Creator. Then previous prophets, the idea of prophethood is not new either. So then with all those scriptures, they came through the hands of messengers. So when Muhammad came out, people knew what prophethood means. Actually, people were expecting a prophet because the previous scriptures also said that somebody would come after them. So it's not only that we are going with the need, but we also see that the world was getting ready to receive a message like this. There was an expectation. But even after this point, if we just look at the first generation Muslims, so these are people who are around him. As we were briefly mentioning yesterday, his house was attached to his masjid. So he was a person in duty for, if you like, 24/7 for delivering the message, in constant observation of people. In his daytime, his Sahabi were constantly watching him and just trying to see if, like, what's happening here. And in his household, like, he had multiple marriages, and actually it's very interesting that he had multiple marriages after at the late stage of his marriage, because I will just quickly open up a parenthesis over there because I think this is also an evidence for his prophethood, his family life. So in age 25, he gets married to a lady, 15 years his senior, stays married to this single lady, like one marriage for 25 years. And at age 50, Khadija, when Prophet is 50, Khadija at this age, who is now 65, passes away, and he stays unmarried for 2 more years. So he's not married. Then once he gets to Medina, he starts making marriages. And those marriages are for multiple reasons. But one of the most important one is, I am in need of, as we have been talking about, how is this revelation lived in life? So I am in need of eyes, if you like, cameras, to observe it in him from different angles and give me those potential answers that I would be in need of. And this is what they were doing. Prophet's life was very carefully observed by multiple people. During a private family lifetime, he was observed from different people of different character. From daytime, the Sahaba were constantly observing him. So all these people showing, it's not like they were at the utmost level of respect to this person, because if think about, you have a boss, how much you respect your boss. I mean, if he's a respectful person, you respect him, that's it. But would you sacrifice your weekend for your boss? Just weekend, I'm not talking about anything more than that. You would say, well, I am busy, I need to go somewhere. Or these people are confirming his message to the degree that they are sacrificing their lives for him and his message. So it's like this level of conviction about what is in there. But this is the first generation. Now look at the generations that are to follow next. It's not like simply he is giving them a temporary touch, but he is really transforming their worlds as well. Like their spirit, their world, everything is changing in there. It's not simply from a certain angle, yeah, I'm going to follow him. So in a sense, with his message, La ilaha illallah, the shape of the world has changed from this darkness to the light. But when this hand touches humanity, you observe that there are multiple confirmations from before and from after to his message that he wrote. So it's not only me. Actually, a lot of people confirm what he is saying.
So you're saying that, validity or some sort of evidence to his message, or the truthfulness of his message, the fact that even so many years after, that people still, and then, over 1 billion claim that he's a prophet, and there's some validity. That also is proof that, what he's saying, there's some truth here.
And actually, it's a very practical proof for that.
Yeah.
Because somebody might claim that, oh, take this message, like there are a lot of personal development books,
Yes, self-help and all that.
self-help books, yeah. And then they say, oh, read this book and you're going to be free from your problems and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And we go and read Amazon reviews if it really does or not. So what did the prophet achieve, if you ask that question? And let's go back to the very first generation, because it's really interesting that the Creator sent this messenger to this location, Mecca. I mean, he was not sent to Constantinople. He was not sent to Iran at that time. He was not sent to Rome. Like, these are centers of civilization. If you send him to there, it's going to be a different spread and whatnot. But the Creator sends him to this place, which is, if you like, quite savagery. Like, they're Bedouins. And the way that the savagery, at least for some of them, were at the level of burying their daughters alive. So those are the people that he started with. But those people are, with the touch of this message and with his exemplar behavior, they are changing to a degree that his Sahabi, people from that society, goes and becomes teacher to those civilized nations. Like they go to Iran, they go to China. Even in the China today, we have Sahabi buried there. So they went all the way to there, which are like civilizations historically, and people are coming from this unlettered Arabian Peninsula, and they are very much strict about their customs. Changing customs are not easy. Like, even if it is somebody smoking, how easily can you make that person quit the smoking? But those people are so much into their customs, and now the prophet comes, and within 23 years, he makes such a change. But just look at, we were talking about MSA or like Muslims in general. Like, in your experience, if you try to take a role in MSA or in your local masjid, changing the slightest thing in your local masjid, since I think experienced this to a certain degree, how easy is that to change a thing? Because there are like those uncles, and they know their way. This is how it's supposed to be. So for 100 years, this is how it had been in Bangladesh, and this is how it's supposed to be. Like, this is another way of saying that this is the truth. I mean, for good, for bad. In Prophet's time, they had their way. They said that from our ancestors, this is how we saw. So this changing the customs, but in 23 years. And if you take a little more role in MSA, you will realize that it's not easy to change anything slightly. And actually, we can try this. Like, in today's society, people are going in such a direction. Like, very unfortunate events happened recently. Like, a 18-year-old gets into a elementary school and keeps shooting people. Why is that happening? If you ask a question, what leads people to do such savagery? It is another type of savagery of burying people alive. But our society, so much civilized we think it is, and it has all these universities and everything. In practice, it's in here, and this is like America is a rich country. It's not like poor. It has everything in its fingertips. It has internet and everything. Are we able to do 1/100th of what he did in 23 years better?
Yeah, no, I mean, one could just focus on that and study just the, prophecy or the history and how it expanded so quickly. And truthfully, I don't know if anybody has an explanation for that. From a secular lens, nobody can really explain how you go from Meccan society and then you take over, I don't know, a third or a quarter of the world in the span after his life, 30 years afterwards, that quickly. It's unprecedented in history.
And the conquer is not simply a conquering of land.
That's true. You're right.
Most
Yeah.
people transform.
Yeah.
It's not simply like Alexander the Great conquering the world, and after his death, everything collapses back.
Yes, yeah,
He was transforming the people.
yeah. I guess if we look into his message a little bit more, what, you know, if we take myself as the addressee, what is actually being delivered to me, and what, or how does it have a practical role in my life?
So he is definitely changing me, solving all my practical problems in life with the message he brings to me. So for example, I guess the biggest problem would be death in this case. So why am I getting old? And like every day, okay, this little baby is so cute, but his cuteness, as he grows, I'm sensing like as he grows, I'm getting old. So I am happy, but also I am sad. It happens in both ways. But also I'm knowing that as he grows older, he's going to start having his own decisions, which probably will be tangential to my decisions in the past. So these are the troubles and problems at store for me. So how am I going to address this? Shall I make calculations about that, or when things that are upsetting happens to me, what would be my response? These are very practical, real life problems that we go through. So I am looking for the messages that would really save me from this. And actually, in his life, I see that at every level, he went through having children, having spouse, having like death occurring in his family, even burying all his children except one when he was alive. So such hardships he went through, and he lived through what would be an exemplary way of demonstrating this. But overall, I guess there is one key point that was so central in his life. We were mentioning this yesterday, but let's now put it into context. So ubudiyya, like him being an abd, him being as if unreachable at the pinnacle of being an abd. And in his life, he had been in this state, and he also demonstrated it. How come? So with his prayer, with his dua, so when I read his dua, for example, it shows how comprehensive of a worldview he adopted for himself and he was living by. And with that, he was in constant need of and seeking help from his creator. Because to me, when I open my hands, what I'm asking for is, oh, my creator, like I am earning this much. Wouldn't it be better if I earn that much more so that I can buy this dream house before I am 60? So this is the level of dua that I have. This is where I feel the lack of something, and I am asking for its fulfillment. But when I look at what Prophet prayed for, what was he asking for? Because abd means needy, as we talked about. But it's not only that, okay, theoretically, I realize I am needy. But personally speaking, and honestly, now I am questioning myself, how much does it help to theoretically understanding and having a theoretical conversation, a philosophical conversation about saying I am needy? How do I show to myself that I am needy? How frequently I remind myself that I am needy? This is where dua comes into the picture. The Prophet's dua in this sense, like his worship in this sense, is so important that he's going to be an exemplary teacher for me when it comes to dua and worship. And he is. And when I read his supplications or the context that he makes dua, I say this person is really unreachable in this sense as well. He's a perfect example for that. And I would expect an exemplary abd to be exactly like this. Like, for example, when you read his dua, the Jawshan al-Kabir, for instance, the way he describes his creator. So it's really a masterpiece of a supplication, I would say, because in there, the dua is simply like this. He describes his creator in the creation. This is the dua. He says, feeder of the babies, or feeder of the animals, or creator of the shadows, which was something so interesting for me. Like, because I would say shadow is just a natural phenomena. Light comes, I block the light, and shadow occurs. In his words, he says no. He describes the creator as, oh, the creator of the shadow.
So through his practical experience.
His practical experience. And at the end, what is he asking for? He says, save me from fire. This is his question. And when I hear this, oh, prophet is asking for to be saved from fire. What does that mean? Prophet is the person who is going to be in the paradise. What does it mean to be saved from fire? Fire is my biggest enemy because I am burning when it is a family problem. Like eternal hell is, if you like, accumulation of my fires in here. And I am burning with family issues. I am burning with economical issues. I am burning with not trusting in my creator. So by describing the creator as such detail with all his experience, he is reminding himself, and I should remind myself that, oh, the one who creates this, who's the maker of that, who's the maker of this, save me from the fire. So even if I just look at his ubudiyya, his worship, I would say that nobody else I see is doing it as much as he does. So he's fearless, he is unreachable, or to at the very forefront when it comes to being an art, which was the conclusion of yesterday's discussion. A messenger would be the person who must be the best of the art, who recognizes and practices his artness to the utmost degree. And I do see that in his life.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's like a lot of these self-help books, these gurus, my experience. So just like you listen to them and they may recognize, oh, that you mentioned, like, I have an economic problem. I have some issue I'm dealing with practically, but then they'll give you a solution to within the world. They'll say, okay, you need to get this job or study this or do this or invest in that. But what you're saying is that he sees the purpose or meaning behind my practical issues, my day-to-day life, my experience with like a spouse or kids or family, and says, there's some meaning in there. How do you address it in a meaningful way that ties into what am I doing here as a human being?
Mhm.
So I guess in that sense, it's a little bit different. It's actually addressing the true meaning behind those, practical concerns I have in life.
And this all again goes back to converting the world for me.
Yeah.
Because the world was initially so much of a dark place for me, but the way he is not depicting the world, or actually it's not depiction, because depiction sounds like it is drawing you an unrealistic but pleasant picture. He is showing me the reality of this
How the world
existence.
really is, yes.
Yeah, how it is, as if he's waking me up
Yeah.
from this nightmare sort of a perspective that I was in.
Yeah.
So as it fits my personality, my humanity so perfectly, and the creation so perfectly, just in here, the message as he brings and as he exemplifies it perfectly fits my reality. And I would say, yes, this is how it is supposed to be. It's perfectly matching.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was kind of a question that we talked about yesterday. So we had talked about how can ubudiyya, living in a state of ubudiyya, be understood from someone else, right? Through someone else's example. But I guess like that question was a little bit overshadowed by a larger question of like, can someone hide who their real like state of being is, if they're an adult or not? And like, I understand the point that's being made about how like, you put it well, of like almost all these cameras in every facet of life, and it's very difficult to hide how you are, especially in like, one's family life, let alone with multiple different angles and people. So I understand that aspect of it. You gave the good example of like, let's say, looking through one's supplications, one's du'as, as a sort of lens of seeing how they view the world and how they're putting their practical experience into a state of worship. But I'm just wondering, like, in what other ways would I be able to see how one lives in a state of ubudiyya so that I can transfer it, or not replicate, but also apply it into my life in such a practical way, because if the prophet acts in a certain way or does something, like I see the external manifestation of something, an action, but I might not necessarily always have access to the internal state or to the consciousness that is driving that, unless it's explicitly stated through like du'as, right? So I don't know, I'm thinking about like I have issues in my life, how, and I do feel like in my day-to-day life, like the prophet really doesn't play that much of a role. But if this is going to be such a useful, such a necessary guide to resolving the issues in my life, how am I to benefit from that? How am I to put into practice that ubudiyya in my own life? How do I access that?
Actually, for dua, it's a very beautiful example
Yeah,
of how it
and
happens.
dua is like very practical, and especially when it's there and I can see it and read it as well.
And putting dua in his historical context is also giving us extra information. For example, when he went to Ta'if for inviting people, he was stoned, he was bleeding, and then there's this dua that he made in Ta'if after being stoned by the people who he was there to invite to share the truth with, but now he is being stoned from them. So you are trying to do good to someone, but they're not only belittling you, but they're also harming you materially. And so you are being hurt, not only emotionally, but also physically. In such a case, his supplication is so beautifully depicting a state of soul, if you like. So now I'm trying to imagine, if this was done to me, how would I feel? So those feelings arose in me. So now I'm trying to do something good, and this person is doing this to me. And then in such a moment, probably I will curse. Let's say he's the prophet, so he wouldn't curse, so he's a nice person. But then what does he do? Is he being angry and opening his hands and saying that, oh God, shower them with your wrath? He's not doing that. So in this sense, for example, his dua is showing his state, how he, and being an example for me, he's saying that they don't know, but as long as this is not something that I did wrong to you or my creator, that I am facing this, I am okay. Still, he is taking it as a conversation between him and his creator. So is this happening to me? Because in creation, things happen like whether I do something wrong and things are like as a warning to me. He is worried about that at this moment. He's not worried about those people harming him, but he's worried about whether this was something that I did wrong and it's a response to me. So it really puts a nice perspective to me, saying that, how am I looking at it? Am I getting lost with how dare Suhail does this to me? Or do I say that, oh, what Suhail does is, Suhail's choice is another thing, but this harm being created is my creator's will. So what does my creator will by that? Was it a warning for me, or was it something else? So like this, the example of dua, but even we see the same thing when he's dealing with other people. So how I treat people is really showing what is inside here. And the issue is, it's not like this person came here and sit here for 3 hours and he acted nice for 3 hours and then he left. We are talking about a life which we know before prophethood as well, but also the 23 years, which was constant observation. But even before his prophethood, he was established as a person of trust. So this is important, and since we see all different angles of this life, then we say that, oh, what could be inside that is coming out as such, and how would I respond versus how he responds? Now I can make a comparison. Then I can say, oh, this person was living this message, so I know what the message is like. I know what he is embodying, and I see that, oh, this must be what is inside. Revelation is what must be inside, and this is how he is living by it. So, and there is a perfect match in between them, nothing contradicting. Then I say, yes, it is. This is how it should be. And actually, this is a nice way to read Revelation as well, like reading a Sirah and reading Revelation. So when I read some act of the messenger, having the question mark of what might be the guidance that he was embodying when he did this. And making, if you like, a cross reading between Sirah and the Revelation. Because Sirah is expected to be the interpretation of Quran.
Right, yeah.
So what did he interpret with this action?
How do you live his life by that?
Anyone else have any other questions? Or does that answer your question, or do you have a
It
follow-up?
does, I guess like it does, and maybe this looks more, a bit more into the third session as well, of like, dua is this very tangible way of accessing that. Here's the text, it was his supplication, now I have it. Like, what are other ways of accessing that? Like, besides supplication, I guess, of accessing, whether it's behavior or something else that gives me a very, not just like a implication of what he might have been like, or not just a potential hint of what he might have been like, but like a very clear portrait of what he was like. Like, do I have to parse it through certain hadith or through certain things, or like, how can I get this sort of fully living, fledged picture dynamically incorporated into my life? And maybe that's again the third session.
Yeah, exactly, third session.
Okay.
Third session for today, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'm thinking that's
Yeah.
probably the third session.
Because there are going to be, like, definitely narrations are there,
Yeah,
which is going to become the next two sessions.
yeah,
But so those eyes recorded what they saw. To what extent can I trust this? And today, how does it work? There's going to be the second and the third sessions for today. But still, it's a very valid question. It's not that he lived and he's left over there, but people who observed him told us what they saw. And this is why I would be concerned about how he was. I cannot simply say, yeah, such a one must exist, and it lives in the pages of the history he's left behind. It doesn't make any sense. I am eager to actually know how he was like.
like, I guess there's just one last comment, like, this is just like off the top of my head, I'm sure there's a much better example, like, I can see a picture of a strawberry, right? And it'll show me the exterior of that strawberry, maybe down to the very details of like the little tiny black seed it has and all the intricacy of it. But maybe, let's say there's a kid in that photo or a person in that photo with the strawberry, but I won't be able to taste that strawberry unless that strawberry is in my hand. I won't be able to have this fully experiential, taste of it, or understanding of it. So like, that's how I'm sort of conceiving ubudiyya as, like, I can have a portrait of it maybe, but how do I taste it beyond just like hearing about certain behaviors or certain actions? Like, that's kind of like where my questions or concerns come in.
Yeah, I guess in today's, so
Yeah.
let's put it into context. So in the next session, the second session of today, fifth session overall, we will talk about the narrations, because right now still we are talking about somewhat narrations. So his du'as reach to me through narrations. And his message also reaches to me through narrations. Like, in a sense, the book was written down right after him, not at his time, but right after him, it was recorded down. We can also take it as a narration. I didn't.
It is a narration, please.
I mean, I didn't hear it from him with my ears.
Nothing different.
So it was written down. His acts and behavior observed was also written down, and it comes down to me. So I am making use of them. So a few questions arise there, which the next session would address. What are the limitations on those narrations, and can I rely on them? Because they are somebody's perspective and whatnot, how am I going to make most of that, as you were questioning? And the fifth one is, at the end of the day, still they are speech. So how can I make it like being this human-to-human interaction with Suhail right now? Because if you tell me, even if he's alive, but I haven't seen him, if you tell me how he was, it's going to be much less than directly talking and interacting with Suhail for 1 hour. Because interacting with him in 1 hour, I will catch what his eyes are telling me, his body language is telling me, and many more. So in this regard, how would this messenger role is to carry it to my day-to-day life? This is another question, which would be today's last session. So just so that we put them into context.
I guess we'll probably pick that up in one of the later next sessions.
Okay.
One question I have is, you talk about worship, you say, okay, he is going to address my problems, practical problems through revelation, through, as I should was asking, his response through the lens of revelation. He's going to address my practical issues. But is that really enough? Because in the end, whether somebody has a view of the world that, oh, if I have economic insecurity, I should get a job and make money, versus me, who I have a perspective that I need to rely on the creator of the universe, even if, I may need some sort of economic security. That person may say, I rely on my job, or I rely on the state, or I rely on a corporation or a company. I'm not saying they're right, but in the end, does it really matter? Like, is there something else there to it?
So I guess a major part of the message is also that at the end of the day, I die. So
Correct,
would it
yes.
really matter if I get rich?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly, yes.
Because you could say that, well, actually, there was a tweet a few days ago I saw like this. One of the persons saying that if they were to give you the Nobel Prize or Turing Award or whatever, but they will take half of your life, however long you're going to live more, would you be okay with doing that? So would you?
They do take half for this price.
So now imagine I'm going to put this much effort to here, and I'm going to die at the end of the day. Even if I'm going to become the king of the world,
You'll be gone at the
I'm
end.
going to be gone. So
Yeah.
what for? So even if you give me all the means to reach this, and I sacrifice everything to reach that, I'm at the pinnacle of however human can rise, and I die. So what? It's so disappointing. Like maybe it's okay up until climbing the top, but once you reach there, it's so much of a disappointment. As higher you go up, the larger is going to be your disappointment because you're going to lose as more. So another very core portion of his message is that this is not all. So there is a life to come. So the idea of akhirah, afterlife, is such a bright, or such enlightens my life to such a degree that it's really completing the picture for me. Because with La ilaha illallah, there's no God but God, and that there is going to be an afterlife, he is really solving my major problems. So for example, what major problem La ilaha illallah solves, along with akhirah, a problem that we know as problem of evil. Why such evils are happening on earth? How are we going to answer this problem? Our current worldview says, just this is how it is. Try to be among the ones winners.
Make it a little bit better, and that's about it for somebody else. Yeah.
Or try to be among the winners.
That's
or
true, yeah.
Or let's try to minimize, as you said,
Minimize
the
harm, yeah.
harm.
Yeah.
So if there are going to be 100 people and we can sacrifice 10 people for the betterment of this 90. So this sort of an justice would be okay for us because this is what we can fulfill. But at the end of the day, 90 dies, 10 dies, everybody dies. So when the idea, the message that he brings about La ilaha illallah and eternal life, then there is no evil that is left on earth, actually. Everything becomes manifestation of the Creator. What I perceive as good and what I perceive as evil is actually all good because they are all telling me about my Maker. He says, with the message he brings, this is how it becomes. And then my most fundamental worry of where is this going to? Where am I going to? Or I feel like, where is my life going? He says, it is not your life. Your life is being given to you. And the one who keeps giving it to you will keep giving it to you. What makes you think that it's going to be taken away from you for good? He invited you to this guest house to make you prepared for, or to whet your appetite for an actual abode where you're going to reside eternally. Because I have the desire for that. I mean, human is never satisfied with this temporary world. So his message of afterlife and eternal happiness, and again, it's not a simple claim because Quran is bringing evidences for eternal life. So to summarize what the messages, the main points that I was touching upon so far. His message, first and foremost, La ilaha illallah, is the biggest evidence for his message. Then how he transformed people. It was not simply putting the idea there and temporarily having power over them. No, it was not subjugating them with power. It was converting them or transforming them into a totally different human being. This is not something that we observe in today's society or in any other people. Then we talked about afterlife right now, for instance. Then we talked about how prophets before him, scriptures before him pointed to him, and how the people in his ages and the following ages, by confirming his message, say that this person is truthful. So all these are pointing to finger towards him, saying that this person is a must be, because unlike, I haven't seen any example like that. Like I have seen Alexander the Great, who conquered large lands and subjugated large people with power. But for how long? And people very quickly, his government collapses. Or I see some wise people who speak some words, but he is solving their problems for a certain thing. Let's say he's the best person for how to do business choices. But, or let's say Karl Marx comes and says, oh, this is how we are going to establish social justice. Over the paper, it sounds so nice, but when it comes to life, it didn't work out. So I see all those bits and pieces of people who are apparently forerunners of certain things. Yeah. But when it comes to the messenger, I see that nobody else has done it as such. This is why his life in this sense was miraculous. The way it's lived, it's there's no example of
and well beyond his life. People, I mean, still adhere to it even after he died. Do you think that, I guess, or I mean, this is maybe to the question asked earlier by Shinur, but do you think he has a transformative effect on people, at least in this the age I live in? So what would that be? What is that transformative effect?
So, like in my personal life, for example, I am being trained with a secular education from the like very early days. So, and to the extent that I'm adopting this survival of the fittest worldview, for example, I am being competitive towards people. And even if I am to help you for something, I would expect something in return. I will do a favor to you, and I will expect a return from you. And like we were having this conversation with my parents at some point. They said that they did some favor to someone, and then later on they heard that this person says, yeah, of course you were supposed to do it because we are relatives. And then they were hurt. They said that, wow, like we didn't have to do it, but we did it. So how come he said, we have other relatives, we didn't do it to the others, but that person says so. So the way he is not bringing the message, when I'm interacting with people, do I interact for myself or do I interact to get to know my maker? Because if it is like this and you do not reciprocate what I give you, I'm going to feel bad. But if it is like, no matter what I interact with you, it is to get to know my maker. If you do it the way I would expect you to do it, or you just misbehave me, in either case, it's going to be a different way of teaching about my maker. So it wouldn't matter for me whether I did a favor to you and you didn't reciprocate it. So this sort of a conversion in my worldview is so central. Like in my personal life, for example, I can experience this. And the way now I look at it, and the example of Taif was important in this sense, because if he was to take this sort of interaction personally, I am going and delivering this message to those people, and they are supposed to accept it, because the message is sound and solid, and I am coming here with very pious intentions and whatnot. If you don't accept, there's no reason for you not to accept it.
Or you could politely decline.
Say it again?
Or you could politely decline.
Yeah, but he goes there and they reject him. if I was taking it in the horizontal level, like I give it and they're expected to accept it as the invitation, I would feel sorry. I would feel angry actually. How dare, like everything is so clear. Like you have to be either stupid or something like that. Like I would get angry. That's how I would be personally speaking. But his response to that was like how he was transformed himself in the first place, as we were saying, is not a robot. It is really living his message. In his case, by living by that message, he is turning to his creator and making it an opportunity to learn about his maker. Likewise, I see that to the extent that I can adapt this to my life, if I did a favor to my relatives, or let's say we made retreats, we invite people, and we make a lot of preparations, and people don't come. So how shall I feel? Shall I?
Who's going to eat all this?
Yeah, who's going to eat all this food? So shall I feel upset? Shall I feel like, oh, I'm not being taken serious? So the way, to the extent that Prophet's message transforms me, I find ease in my heart if somebody comes or if somebody does not come. If I am being taken serious, if I'm not being taken serious. Because the issue is not with the people I'm not taking personal, but it is like with my creator, what does my creator tell me with this picture? So it is really transforming me in this sense. So I have this first-hand experience to the extent that I am transformed by this message. But over all the centuries, we do observe that people have been transformed, and it's not a power subjugation over them. Because this is what some people want to depict it like. Oh, the armies of Umar, after the Prophet's time, he took over Iran and then he took over Egypt and whatnot. So there's this expansion, and those people accepted Islam just because the armies were conquering and then they got assimilated. Like those people you observe there left everything of them actually. Like even Arabic became their language, although they are not Arabs. It's not that they were like in today's, what's it called, national education. You have to do the education in a single language. There's no national education in those times. Like it's not that everybody goes to school, you have to go like 8 years, and that 8 years education is going to be in English. Done, you have to learn English. It's not like that, no such educational system. But people learn Arabic to familiarize themselves with Quran. So this much of love developed, and Arabic became their language. And it's not Arabic in this sense. It is the language of Quran became their language. So they were so much in love with this message. So we observe that even the centuries afterwards, this Islamic expansion was not an expansion of land or power. It was an expansion of this worldview being adopted by those people. So it transformed people with all those nations. But I guess the most maybe clear-cut examples for that are in the early Arabian peninsula, when they were so much in one end of the spectrum.
You know, it's interesting because, from my own experience, to get somebody to change, to do anything is very difficult. Like you mentioned smoking earlier, or to get somebody just to quit is, and some people don't, but it takes quite a while to do so.
Yeah.
But it's interesting with the Prophet, is that it's just a short amount of time, not only change one person, but change an entire society. That's, as you mentioned, from bearing their daughters to not. It's a completely, they must have had some sort of change in their entire worldview for that to happen. So
and we do experience this, right?
Yeah.
Like during the breakfast, we were talking about that. So what we do is we detect the problem. Let's say the way we were talking it in the breakfast was it is easier to have a conversation with maybe a person who is unsure about
Yes.
God, or maybe if it's not a atheist with like
a militant or
militant
aggressive,
atheist, but
yeah.
somebody who is
Yes.
somewhat in search, it's easy to have a conversation, we said. But when somebody is coming from a cultural background of Muslim background today, it's being hard to have a conversation. Why? What was the reason? Because we are close to change in general. Like humans are close to change. So, and making this change is really taking a lot of effort. So even today, so, and when you try to, let's say, talk about prophet like this, as we're trying to do here, so you would get some sort of resistance from people. It's hard to change people, but the way he changed people are, yes, so it's unmatched. You don't observe anything like that.
What if, I think maybe we'll end with this pretty soon, but is there any sort of merit to say that he is just the greatest self-help person, the greatest sort of motivational speaker? Yeah.
So,
I mean, because there are people who do that. I'm not saying he is, but
Yeah.
he's just the best. He did the best.
if we overload the meaning of self-help,
Okay.
because with the current meaning of self-help, it is more like self-help for self-development.
Correct. You're right. Yes, it has its own baggage. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
but
very specific.
the way he is developing is actually, he is transforming self, let's put it this way. Because self-help is sanctifying the self. You are trying to become like elevated self. You're
Yeah.
trying to become a small God. This is what self-help is, self-perfection. But the way he introduces perfection is becoming Abd. So it is exact opposite directions, because today's self-help is trying to make yourself bigger and more shiny. Like it goes in the direction of egotism. But the way he is helping me is to say that become an Abd. This is where true human perfection lies. So in this sense, yes, he is the perfect self-help teacher or self-transformer. Right?
Well, I guess my question is because somebody may come and say, you know, that maybe he was just doing this. I mean, he came up with this idea on his own to help people. I mean, I agree with you though, that it wouldn't make sense because what does he gain from it himself? You know, if that's his perception, then he's gone now. So what does he benefit out of it now at this point? There's nothing he gains out of it. But as you mentioned, changing people's worldview, that's something personal for everyone, you know, without him making any money off of it or getting some notoriety or fame or power or anything of that sort.
So like people do that for fame.
Yes,
People do that for fame. So being famous is something so dear to us.
it is. Yeah, it's a human, like it's some sort of want, or
Yeah.
people have this sort of need or egoistic need to be known, recognized.
Yeah, so that's why some, especially the Western Orientalists would say, like, since the idea of God is not there, and consequently the idea of prophet is not there, so what they would say in this case would be like, yeah, this person actually, okay, based on what he says, with the Quran and whatnot, yeah, what he says seems to be wise. That's good. But what if he came up with the idea? And we were sort of alluding to that yesterday's discussion. So the question is being, so it might be that he just saw that those people are savages.
Yeah.
And he wanted to speak to them in a way that they would understand. So since these are like superstitious people, he comes up with stories and then he scares them, since they are like wild-minded people, scares them with fire and like sort of, I wouldn't say practically, Quran doesn't mention monsters, but in a sense like monsters and stories and whatnot. So for the good of the people, he was a good intentional people. For the good of his people, just he came up with the stories. Isn't it possible? Actually, this is the Western narrative for the prophet, saying that this is how he was. Because this is not denying Quran in the sense of it being a book of wisdom, but it's a book of wisdom like the Hindu scripts. So it's just another script, because Hindus do not ascribe it to God. So it's like written by some people. So here it is for this person, Muhammad has written it, like wise words, and he has good intentions. Like, so in the sense, it is some sort of an innocent lies. That this is how it is being depicted, right? But is it possible? Because as we were touching upon this yesterday, what does it mean to be speaking on behalf of the Creator? Is it an innocent lie, really? Can such a thing would really go hand in hand with the truth? Because if I say, if let's say Birkan was not here, and if I come here and say, oh, Birkan told me that Büşra should go to that place, then you would say, well, are you sure? Because if Birkan becomes aware of what I said, he would get furious. Like, he is most precious, Büşra. I am making a statement about Büşra on behalf of Birkan, in the absence of Birkan, despite Birkan's wish. So it would be, even if it is going to be something good for Büşra, and I'm doing it like that because otherwise Birkan's wife will not allow me to take Büşra to anywhere. So for the good of Büşra, I am making an innocent lie and whatnot. So Birkan would become furious. He would say no. But this is just some simple human level relationship. Now we are talking about the Creator of the heavens and the earth. I am claiming to be speaking on behalf of. And the people that I speak to, I am talking about their every detail of their life. It's so critical for their life. So the things that at stake are so large. It's not simply one person's life. It is, I am speaking on behalf of not Birkan, but the Creator of heavens and the earth. And the speech that will come out of my mouth, since it's supposedly coming from the Creator, it's affecting everybody's every moment of their life. So it is such a big lie. It's not an innocent lie in this case. So I would become the bigger of the liars. It's not going to be just a small white lie for the good of the people.
But one could say the greatest liar.
Greatest liar, exactly. So then the question becomes, being such a greatest liar, can I think of any sort of good quality along with this liar?
No, it's contradictory, yeah.
Because if you see me mistreating someone, let's say you see that I am misbehaving to a child, I'm just slapping the child and whatnot, sorry. So then you see me doing this outside. And then I come in and I give some lecture to you about how to be pious and whatnot. How would you listen to me? So you are the guy who slapped the kid out there? Are you kidding me? I'm not going to listen to you, you would say. Because like there's a contradiction. What you did and now what you're claiming to be doing, it doesn't match. So being the greatest liar, lying in the name of the Creator, and then in my message, I'm going to be still in my life, I'm going to be the kind person, I'm going to be this abd. They do not match. So if he is the biggest liar, I wouldn't be observing any good qualities in his life. I think that's a question.
Go ahead.
I guess like another claim that comes forth, right, is that okay, like Muhammad was sincere, but what he went through was some sort of psychedelic experience or seizures that he really thought was happening. But I guess then at that point, what one does is look at again the message that is being brought forth and see if it can, what source it must come from.
Yeah. So such a message, have we seen or do we expect such a message to come from some people who is unstable in his psychology?
Yeah, because and I'll say like it's either, if we start with two categories, it's either intentional or unintentional, right? And under intentional, it's either like conning people, just like the biggest con man, which is again, as we talked about and as you just said, at the complete opposite spectrum of what being an abd is. So you can't have two sort of coexist at the same time. Or if it's unintentional, then again, the message that is being brought forth becomes like this litmus test, as well as like just the life that's lived in accordance with that message, or as you said, the transformative. So I mean, there are like three options, yes. this person, since I guess this session, I mean, this is not the title of it. The title of it is Muhammad really the person that I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
So that it's either yes, or second, no was like, intentionally deceiving, or 3, unintentionally deceiving.
Yeah.
I mean, those, I don't know if there's a 4th option, those are the 3 ones that come to mind.
And like about this psychedelic or schizophrenic thing, astaghfirullah. So it's also against our own, again, the empirical experiences about such conditions. Like we don't know any such conditions which kind of attack the stability of the person, end up providing more stability in his life and the people around him. So there's no such thing that we are aware of. Like making such analogies, it's like really bad intention. Like it's like inventing something. Like we don't know
for one person.
Exactly. Like throughout the history of this psychiatry, like we don't know any such condition again which would come with the stability in the society and at such a big scale.
Yeah.
So it's again like
Going to
a
extreme
childish approach to something that we experience.
Because I see, like even in, let's say, certain texts that are talking about the life of the prophet, and the author might be someone who's seemingly sympathetic, but not accepting the person as actually a messenger. But might say, well, like let's look at like sort of harmonious ways to reconcile it with like still being able to accept that he was a good person, but just not what we are. Like you can't reconcile it in that instance. Like you can't, like the excuses don't help. There's no way to both say he's a good person and at the same time reject his messenger, basically.
So if he is a good person, he cannot be coming up with the idea by himself. Because coming up with the idea himself means he's a liar. He is a liar at the end of the spectrum. Greatest of the liar cannot be merged with any sort of good qualities that we can think of. So either if I'm saying he's a liar, then I would say all he did was for cunning people, no good purpose there. Or if I say he was a good person, then I have to accept that he was a messenger. So there is nothing in between.
Well, I think unless anybody has any other questions, we'll probably close here. So just to recap, what we talked about is that, as we mentioned that we do need a guide, practically speaking. It's just our human life, our human experience, that we do need a teacher or a guide, instructor. And that person who comes should be answering our most basic fundamental human questions. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? Where are we going? So it has to incorporate all of those things and address it, not just only from like a theoretical, I guess maybe abstract or theoretical perspective, but also from a practical perspective. And does so in such a way where how I feel or how I experience the world needs to line up with my experience of the world out there. It has to make sense, it has to be compatible with the rest of the universe. And then it also, the whatever is being taught to me, we'll call it revelation, has to be compatible with me and the universe. And the person who brings it, as we just talked about, I mean, he has to be consistent. He himself has to live it. Otherwise, it seems contradictory. It has to be consistent with me. And ideally, as you said, it has a transformative experience on our life. And if we find that person, in the case, we found it in finding it in the messengership of Muhammad, then, he must be that person, that prophet who's come to address my human needs, my human questions.
And maybe one more point about the, not only that, but he also showed miracles in his lifetime.
Yes.
So just to briefly touch
That's right. Yes.
touch upon that, because there are a few questions in there. Like when the matter is about miracles, because we hear again miracles from narrations, which we will touch upon in the next session. But the idea of miracles, especially in this age, is being challenged a lot.
Correct. Yes.
Like as we were mentioning, I guess it was in the first session, So especially for America, let's say, America is a country which believes in God in general. Like the founding fathers were Christians, and still people swore upon Bible and everything. So the founding fathers were removing the parts about prophets and miracles from the Bible, like in Jefferson's Bible. So this idea of theism was inherent for this country. Why did they remove the ideas about miracles from the Bible, for instance? So this shows a tendency in the Western world, or the materialist mindset, towards miracles. It's something that we are not willing to accept. But Messenger has shown some miracles. Let's first talk about that and then talk about why there's resistance not to accept it. Because nowadays in Muslim world, there are certain sounds now rising up saying that there were no miracles of the Messenger except Quran. We hear that from some Muslim scholars or so-called scholars. So first of all, what's a miracle? A miracle is normally, let's say, a cup of water is going to feed one person. This is how you know of it. But then this one cup of water I bring here, and I feed 10, 15, 20 people from this one cup of water. You said that it's miracle, like the Arabic word is mu'jiza, because it's mu'jiza, meaning it makes you incapable. Like you say that it's not possible. I wouldn't be able to do that. There is divine is creating this water. Because otherwise, I know that this one cup of water is good enough for only one person. If it is 20, then that means 19 extra cup of water is created. So the creator is acting here. So miracle is a clear indication that the creator is acting there. I mean, when I was drinking one cup of water for one person, was creator not acting there? He was acting there, but since I take it for granted, I get used to it, I don't see it. When it happens with the miracles, we just see it so obviously. Otherwise, creation is taking place, if you like, 24/7. But it's my ignorance. I don't notice it, maybe. But in the case of miracle, the creator who used to feed one people with one cup of water is now saying that I'm going to feed 20 people with one cup of water. The same creator, he used to act in this way, and now he is acting in that way. So in this regard, from creation point of view, there's no difference. Both of them are creation. He used to create one, he's now creating 20. Nothing hard to understand here. But what is it specific for the messenger? Why does messenger show miracles? So this person is coming with a big claim. This person is saying that the speech that I bring to you is from your creator and from the creator of the heavens and the earth. So, I mean, think about it. Somebody enters this room with that claim. What would you say? How would you look at that person? Like, even if you would expect such a message to come, you would say, are you that person? And this is what we are trying to do since the beginning of this session, right? Are you that person? I mean, this is a big claim. Okay, I am in need of that message, but are you that person? So, especially for the first generation, for them, the message is not completed. They are seeing this person time to time. So in our case, things are much different. We have a completed message. We have a completed life. We have several confirmations over his life, over centuries and whatnot. We have a lot of more information that supports his prophethood. But now we are especially talking about this first generation. For them, they are in need of a stamp which shows that, yes, this is speech of the creator. Some extra information is needed. So how does miracle become that stamp? Since the claim is about, I am bringing you the speech of the creator, how would creator says, yes, he is bringing it to you? Let's say a police comes here and shows me some paperwork saying that I got it from the judge, and the judge allows me to enter this place, this building, and make a search. How would I know if it's not a fabricated paper? So one thing that I can do is if I have the phone number of the judge and call the judge and say, well, somebody is here, they claim that they come from you, are they? And if the judge says, yes, I will take it, then you can come in. But where's my phone? How am I going to call the creator and say that, oh, my creator, somebody came in and said that, brought some paper, which is interfering with my life. I'm going to let him in, but did you send this messenger to me? So But where's the strength? The phone is my life. I am living in a life in which constantly I am in conversation with my creator. Like he is the one who creates this one cup of coffee, 1 cup of water. And he normally says, I would make this 1 cup of water to be feeding one person. This is how my creator constantly in touch with me. And when the messenger comes and says, look, this is 1 cup of water created by my creator, right? Yes. So now he is going to create, he's going to feed 20 people with that. To confirm that actually I am speaking on behalf of him. And the creator feeds 20 people with this 1 cup of coffee. So miracles become, if you like, visible proofs of confirmation from the creator of this heaven and earth, saying that, yes, the message he brings is coming from me. So in a sense, like the example, another example is a person comes, claims to be the envoy of the king, and king can say, yes, he is my envoy with speech to support him, or king is normally the king would act like this, but for this person specifically, he says, oh yeah, now I'm acting like that. So this action of the king becomes a confirmation of the message. So the miracle is an action-wise confirmation of the creator to the speech and to the claim that the messenger comes with. So it is so central for his message. Messengers must have shown miracles to confirm the people, because there are types of miracles actually. One type is to strengthen people's hearts. Like they are believers, but they are not sure. They have still question marks. And we see examples of that in the Sierra. One example would be uncle of the Prophet, Abbas. So he used to believe, but not sure about the messenger. He has the idea of God. He confirms, he believes in God, but I mean, you are claiming this prophethood, but are you sure? So when Prophet tells him about after the battle, when he's captured, so he is asking money from his uncle to be released. And he says, I don't have money. He says, well, you left some money with your wife in such and such place. And he says, this was only between me and my wife. No third person knew this actually. So only it was between two of us and the creator. So it must be that you are the prophet of the creator, that you knew this. I mean, he told you this so that you knew it. So then now I believe my belief is solidified. So this is one type of a miracle for strengthening people's belief. Another one is there are people who are just insisting, ignorantly insisting not to believe. So miracles are going to just break this the threshold.
Resistance.
Yeah, that resistance to be broken, to push up the threshold, just to eradicate that. Or even sometimes it was simply believers were in need of help, like they were in a battle, they are in need of water, and just the creator gives them some sustenance, and this lights up their spirit and whatnot. So this is, miracles must exist, and this is the purpose of miracles. They are clear proofs of his prophethood, and they existed in his case. But one question that comes afterwards is, then why does, and let's say, okay, Thomas Jefferson was a Westerner and he didn't want the miracles to be there and whatnot. What happens with some Muslim, like modern Muslim scholars, to say that, oh no, it was only Quran is his only miracle. No other miracle is in there. Quran does not mention any other miracle, although it does, but they say Quran does not mention any other miracle, so it's all made up. What's going on here? First, why do they say that? Why is this such an attitude? Let's talk about that, because I think this why is important than the rest. Apparently, the excuse that's going to be introduced would be the weakness of narrations and whatnot, but it is just an excuse. The real reason, I think, is similar to what Thomas Jefferson did. If I am taking this mindset of materialist worldview or the sciences as the ground truth, and say that, oh, everything is happening by a law. Like if you pour water over fire, fire is going to get extinguished. If you throw a person into the fire, a person is going to burn because fire burns. So it's natural. The idea of natural is so much prominent in our lives. Even if we claim to be a believer and whatnot, this is what our hearts are residing in, unfortunately. And especially for the East, like including Muslims, but generally East, we have this inferiority complex towards Western worldview. So rather than trying to challenge this with La ilaha illallah, we are trying to distort La ilaha illallah so that it's going to fit it. Although these two worldviews are like the naturalistic worldview versus La ilaha illallah are opposing to each other head to head. They're like black and white. What we are just trying to say, oh yeah, Quran says the same story. Like the Western worldview says this is how evolution is, whatnot. Rather than trying to see where is this coming from, what purpose does it serve, we say, oh yeah, there's this verse in Quran which confirms the idea of evolution. Like this, such apologetic attitude that quote unquote Muslim, I would say, would have is inevitably when it comes to miracles, since it's not something that can be explained with a natural worldview, what would you say? The easiest thing is to get rid of it. Because you don't have the courage to dig deeper and say that this has no truth in it. I mean, the natural worldview has no truth in it. And every moment is a new creation. So the creator is the one who creates fire. The creator is the one who creates burning. So if Ibrahim is thrown into fire, if he doesn't will to burn, the fire wouldn't burn, because burning is not something naturally occurring with fire. And it's that only when Ibrahim was put into fire, God intervenes and not makes him burn. It is not the case. Every moment is being created afresh. That's what La ilaha illallah means. So therefore, since we are not there, or some people are not there, the easiest thing is being that let's get rid of this miracles because it's corrupting the narrative. It's not fitting the Western worldview, which somebody believed to be the truth itself. Then, but of course, confessing it as such is going to be a big deal. Then comes our excuse. What is it? These are narrations. In Quran, we don't see that, they say. Well, we do see that. Quran mentions about splitting of the moon, for example. Quran mentions miracles of previous messengers from beginning to end there. But then they say in the narrations, there are narrations which are fabricated. There are narrations which are considered weak, which are correct. Yes, there are weak narrations. There are fabricated narrations, that's right. But the presence of such things, they cast doubt by using these on the other narrations, which are stronger narrations, saying that let's get rid of all the narrations. So this why is something else. Our excuse for denying them is something else. So this is why I think we should ask the question about miracles should exist, but if I am at the position of not being reluctant to accept them and whatnot, the question is, what is my motive for that? Where is it coming from? So that's why I think, or one more rejection is there. We don't observe such miracles anymore. So this is why they should not have access to that anymore, like, as if they are just stories that are coming from before. You don't need to, like, the reason for miracle is no more, because nobody is claiming to be messenger anymore. This is another thing. But taking it from another perspective, if you look at the creation with the lens of La ilaha illallah, every moment is a miracle. So I think this is where we can conclude it.
Well, I think we will end there. I think we'll pick this up with the next session about, because he is a historical figure, how do we practically benefit from it, as you mentioned earlier. So I think that will be the next session, inshallah.
Is that the third session? I think the next session is.
Next session.
Historical narration.
Oh, historical narrations, yeah, right.
So, all right, you want to close? Are we going to close? سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.